Okay, hey everybody, welcome to another episode of On Point EDC. Today we have an awesome review for you from a brand new to the channel, but not new to the community. So this is from Olamic Cutlery, also known as Olamic Tactical. Now they were founded back in 2010. They're out of California. They pretty much started with custom fixed blades and expanded into folders back in 2013. Their market segment is high-end to luxury with full and also semi-custom knives. As far as semi-custom goes, basically that means they have pre-machined base components, essentially, and that are hand finished versus a full custom hand worked from the ground up custom knife. So that does definitely help with the pricing. It also means that they're going to be more readily available and the turnaround times are much faster, which is really, really great. Now, as far as this type of knife, if you were to break it down into a, its most base form and just the locking mechanism, this is a titanium frame lock folding knife. Essentially, the Chris Reeve integral style lock, essentially, which is an evolution of the Walker liner lock. Titanium handle with an integrated frame lock. So, of course, there's different types of blade options and so many, a bevy of ways you can describe a knife, but the locking mechanism, I'd say, is probably the most core way that you can describe it. Now, this particular model is the WhipperSnapper, which is a new one out there, and the particular blade style choice I made for my particular example is the Wharncliffe blade. Now, this is a front flipper designed by A. Kolzanov as a follow-up to their Busker model, which is a small front flipper frame lock as well. And this is essentially a fidget-friendly, you can see it's not just a front flipper, but also does have an opening hole there as well. So it supports tons of different methods of opening, and it also has a 4-finger grip. So with all that said, let's go ahead and take a closer look. Okay, now before we jump fully in, let's go ahead and do the customary wristwatch check. So here we have the Notice Duality, and the reason why I wanted to wear this particular timepiece while reviewing this knife is because I think there's some similarities in that this is just a great example of something that is completely meant to be a functional tool, that kind of dive style compressor watch, but somehow you can find so much aesthetic pleasure in just the beauty of it, right? So there's this functional cutting tool that just happens to be absolutely gorgeous, super well finished, well machined. It's just another level up from what it was originally intended for. And when it comes to a sports watch that was intended to basically keep time when you're doing some water sports action or living your life here, there's definitely a lot of beauty and functionality and some organic lines here that I think flow really well and also do well here. So definitely check my channel for the full review on this timepiece from Notice. Big ups to them. So that's what's going to be flopping around on my wrist during this particular review. Now, without further ado, here we go, guys. Just breathe that in for a minute. Look at that. Just gorgeous piece of metal there. Of course, Olamic do specialize in custom and semi-custom, so this was all spec'd out by me using their very fun and intuitive system that they have. If you log onto their site, you essentially have a bunch of drop downs, and depending on what drops down, you're going to choose different things like how you want the hardware to be, how do you want the pivot, what type of accents, what type of finish, everything down to, hey, do you want to have a backspacer or standoffs? It's all there for you guys, and some people get really crazy with this, but for me, I just thought these organic lines were absolutely just so breathtaking on their own, that in even a very minimalist finish, as you're going to see here, this thing was still really going to have legs and really sing, which I think it does really nicely. It looks amazing open. It looks great, of course, on that show side, and then even on the pocket clip side, I think it's great to look at. And then even closed, this thing is quite a showstopper. If you're follow me on Instagram, I'm sure you've actually seen a couple of these. You've seen this one actually featured a bunch of times on my Instagram feed closed because it looks that damn good closed as well. Whoa! party foul. Overexcited. Take a breath. All right. Anyways, guys, this thing's absolutely fantastic. I mean, look at that. So a little bit about the specs. You know what? You know, a lot of it is dependent on the configuration, right? So as far as the pricing goes, so depending on how you choose to spec this out, and also I was one of the early adapters by ordering from the first batch, and this thing was done super fast. So thank you to Olamic for that. It's going to depend on pricing, right? But this isn't a cheap knife by any means. This is going to be 400, 500 bucks, depending on how you spec it. And then, of course, if you have to pay California sales tax, so on and so forth, right? This is not a cheap knife, but for what it offers, to me, it somehow is a screaming value, guys. This thing is amazing. So, the blade shape, of course, we already covered it being a Wharncliffe blade. The blade steel itself is actually Crucible's. Here we go. It's their CPM at 20 CV, which essentially is a super stainless steel, similar in formula and composition to Bowler M390 and Carpenter CTS 204P. So this is kind of the darling of blade steels right now when it comes to your modern super steels and your, you know, top of the line premium knives. It does have a flat grind with satin finishing, and that Wharncliffe shape is really nice. And has some great accents and beveling there and little swedge action going on. So really, really handsome from that standpoint. The handle is, of course, titanium with a light matte bead blast finish, and it does have the speed holes drilled through there. For a little bit of, I guess it can add a little bit of tactile feeling for grip, but it also does help lighten this bad boy up. So this particular one here came in weighing at just 3.05 ounces. No, so not 3.5, but 3.05 ounces, which is really great considering that there is a decent amount of bulk and heft to this piece, and it does feel quite solid in hand. Now, the overall length on here is just under 7 inches at 6.875. The blade length is just under 3 inches at 2.95. Close length, not including the flipper, is just about 4 inches when you're just considering the handle itself, and then you get to about 4.3 if you include the flipper tab there. Now, in-hand ergonomics, this thing is a real pleasure. You do have that great finger choil, really nice to grip, of course, and then you do get more grip because of the style over your basic Olamic busker model. So really nice, super smooth, guys. This thing is, of course, on bearings, caged bearings at that. And then you also do have that beautiful ceramic detent ball. You can see also the dual stop pins there. If I move this out of the way, you can see there's a stop pin for when it's closed and a stop pin for when it's open. Really, really great. As far as size comparisons go, I'd say a very easy comparison would be my Chris Reeve knives, small Sebenza 21, and with that Insingo blade, it's, of course, you're gonna have to play a little bit with perspective when you're looking at this on camera. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna hold them vertically here at kind of an angle so you get a better idea versus one looking much bigger just because it's closer to the camera. So as you can see, very, very close in size and even a similar aesthetic to them. They're really beautiful, of course, with the Sebenza being more of a classic, very traditional, kind of to the nth degree of quality and precision in production knife making. But one that it actually reminds me of a lot is my Kaiser here, my mini Intrepid, which is a limited edition only to 500, but this thing's gorgeous. M390, so similar composition on the blade steel, but then you do have actually a very similar scale and also super modern, right? You're getting that you're getting it on bearings, you're getting a steel lock bar insert, whatnot. Really, really nice, and of course very simple and svelte color palettes here, except you're going to get a very nice thin hollow grind. But when it comes to kind of that feeling of smoothness, that is very much the case, making it quite similar. But for me, a surprising one is my Sage. Gosh, I mean, this is the Sage 2. I don't think it even says it on here, but this discontinued now. But basically, the organic lines and the chamfers here on this very simple, handle scale definitely remind me of that. Of course, I do have this Rips Garage Tech milled pocket clip there, and then I just added my own little personal hand-tied 550 cord lanyard. But when it comes to the way that feels in hand with the choil and everything, and the lightness and the svelteness, of course this is more tech heavy, so maybe if you take these two, right, you blend them together, you take something like this and you modernize it, and they had a baby, and it happened to also be a front flipper at that. Man, that action is insane. The sound it makes when you open it and when you close it, super smooth on this close, guys. And there's a reason for it. If you actually look here, if you see inside, if it let me focus, let me get these guys out of the background, make it a little easier for it to focus. You see that ceramic detent ball, right? But there's actually a ramp in the blade that will ease that ball in as you're coming to close it. So when it's actually closing down, there's a little bit of a ramp there that just makes a super smooth transition to actually pushing the lock bar out of the way as it comes down. And it's just normally, guys, as you're passing the detent ball, once you break it, essentially there's just a pop. So right here, right? So it's just holding there, then there's a bit of a pop, and then see how it just jumps and then wants to come down and close because it just breaks that little ball. So it gives you, a little form of kind of building up that pressure and whatnot. But here on the close, because of that little ramp that they built into the blade, it's just such a smooth transition. It just makes the closing action feel so similar to something like, like my Sebenza, where when that closes, this thing just freaking glides. It just feels like it's on glass, just coming down really smooth, consistent feeling, that tactile feeling of the blade just coming down and just being super smooth on that transition. That's what I get from here. And that's something that I haven't really noticed, in other knives. It's just, although it's on bearings and it's super smooth to open and close, that feeling of, getting past the detent ball, which normally you break it and then bam, then you can kind of push it down. You don't have that. So instead of being able to kind of like, really slam this thing shut, it ends up being this really smooth glass-like feel, which I definitely can appreciate from that standpoint. So really smooth and fast. When it comes to opening, the close is a little bit slower, of course. I mean, you could close it faster if you wanted to, but it's not something where you're going to be like, hey, fall shut, because it's, at the end of the day, it's a smaller blade, right? As far as model variants go, there's a near infinite, amount of models you can actually. Let me just do a couple different openings, see if I can get it. There you go. With the thumb, and then let's see if I can get the finger going. I'm not huge on Spider flicking it forward, even with Spyderco, so I was surprised I was able to do that. So you can open it different ways. Even if you wanted to, you could do this thing, a little two-hand action, because let's say you're worried, you're at work or out at a restaurant, people are going to look at you like you're crazy. That thing just opens really, really beautifully. So smooth. I just can't get over how smooth this is, guys. That is just one of those things, those tactile feelings, like when you have a watch, right? And let's say it has a dive bezel and you can turn it. This has an internal bezel, so not the greatest example. But when you have a dive bezel and you're just like turning it, and that tactile feeling, that's similar to just the amazing, just glass-like play that you're going to get with this. And it's just, whew, I wish I could get this to come through on the camera, guys. That thing is just an absolute bank vault. And of course, you can't shake free. The detent is definitely nicely dialed in. So again, comparable models. You know, there's a lot of front flippers out there, but you know what? This one just has a certain magic about it. You know, the only front flippers I can think of are honestly like super expensive custom front flippers when it comes to something in this modern aesthetic, right? There's a front flipper I recently reviewed that I love, but it's much more of a traditional aesthetic with that Penna front flipper trapper. So that definitely has a different vibe to it altogether, but it's also a front flipper. This one's easier to flip, but obviously it's not limited. Its ergonomics aren't limited by trying to look like an old traditional knife. This one can just flip because they designed the flipper to work great for front flipping, and a bunch of other ways too. I could probably do it this way if I had the physical dexterity in my fingertip to pull it, but I'm just, you know, I'm not the ace of front flipping. But man, look at that thing. Absolutely gorgeous. Just, whew, this thing stands out in so many good ways. Let me wipe some of the grease off here, guys. My palms are sweating just dealing with this thing because it's just that sexy. And then you got the milled clasp with the, milled pocket clip with the nice standoffs there. So there's not, you don't have to worry about any type of spring to it. And then instead of having the ball inset, a ceramic ball, you actually do have kind of a milled out round kind of teardrop underneath. So this thing is going to easily slide in and out while also being able to retain the knife in your pocket. Of course, I do have standoffs versus a backspacer because I did want to keep this kind of a minimalist build. And also it does keep the price down, I'm sure. Although I didn't ask what it would cost the other way. So maybe I didn't even save any money. Who knows? I'd say for this knife here, bottom line, you know, the Olamic brand essentially have earned themselves a lifelong fan due to the sheer level of excellence displayed in this true gem, to quote Nick Shabazz, of a pocket knife, guys. This thing is just the absolute business. Let's just behold this guy here. I mean, just look at these chamfers. Just the beveling all around it. Everything is just so fine, so symmetrical, so well done. Just everything is just dialed in. And that's not even considering this gorgeous Wharncliffe blade here. I'll let you guys get nice and close in on it. Beautiful satin finish there. And again, there's looking at it, but then there's that just undeniable fidget factor, guys. And I didn't realize how much the kind of the deployment speed was such a big deal to me until I really started playing with front flippers. You know, I tried even as recently a modern slip joint, and I realized without the fun of deploying it, whether it's, you know, some type of a traditional flipper, front flipper, axis lock, stuff like that are very fidgetable knives, I just realized so much joy was taken out of it just because of the deployment method. And this thing has just a fun, different deployment method that just your hands aren't used to, which I think is fun and actually makes you kind of be more thoughtful in the way that you're going to flip it out. Which is just a good time. And you can see here, man, this thing just, you can lock in on that. So as a pure cutting tool, of course, you know, Wharncliffes are really great for slicing. This thing is just absolutely amazing. So let me know what you guys think in the comments below. If you like the video, please do a like. And if you're not, please subscribe for more content just like this. Thanks, guys.